The shredder made a sound like bones breaking. I followed it to the garage, my stomach already twisting into knots before I even saw what was happening. My father stood there, feeding paper into the machine, one deliberate strip at a time. The crimson Harvard logo disappeared first, then my name, then the word congratulations. Dad, what are you? You're not leaving this house for some stuck-up school, he shouted, not even looking at me. I lunged forward, but the last corner vanished into the metal teeth before my fingers could reach it. The shredder hummed victoriously, digesting my future into confetti. I dropped to my knees, grabbing at the thin ribbons scattered across the concrete floor. They were too small, too many. My hands shook as I tried to fit pieces together like a jigsaw puzzle made of shattered dreams. My name is Lauren Price. I was 17 years old, and that was the day my father decided my dreams didn't matter. I sat on that cold garage floor for what felt like hours, staring at the shredded pieces. My father stood over me, arms crossed, like he'd just done something noble instead of monstrous. He picked up his beer from the workbench and took a long sip, watching me with eyes that held no regret. I saved you from wasting money you don't have, he muttered, words slurring slightly. College is for people who think they're too good for real work. Behind him, my mother appeared in the doorway. She wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself, as if the fabric could protect her from what was happening. Our eyes met for just a second. I waited for her to say something, anything. To tell him he'd gone too far this time. Please don't start this again, she whispered. Not to him. Me. That's when something inside me cracked. Not just from the loss of the letter, but from the silence of the one person who could have stopped him. The one person who should have chosen me. It wasn't the first time he'd destroyed something I loved. When I was 14, I brought home a report card with straight A's. My teacher had written a note at the bottom. Lauren has exceptional potential. I'd been so proud I practically floated home. Dad read it at the dinner table. His face got red, that vein in his forehead pulsing like it always did before he exploded. You think you're better than me? He'd asked quietly. Too quietly. Before I could answer, he tore the card in half. Then quarters. Then kept ripping until my grades were just paper snow on the meatloaf. Grades won't get you a husband, he said, shoveling potatoes into his mouth like nothing happened. They just make you difficult. I learned early that every achievement felt like a crime against his ego. So I started hiding things. My awards went in the back of my closet. My acceptance into the honor society stayed a secret. I made myself smaller, hoping it would make him bigger. Never did. The Harvard application had been my secret project. I'd hidden the papers under my mattress, working on essays at 2 in the morning when the house finally went silent. The blue glow of my laptop was the only light, my fingers flying across the keys while I listened for footsteps. I wanted to study biochemistry. Not to run away from my family, but to prove I was worth more than the insults I'd grown up with. Every time Dad called me stupid, every time he said I'd never amount to anything, I thought about that application. Kept me breathing. I'd paid the application fee with money from my part-time job at the grocery store. Money I'd told my parents was going towards school supplies. Not a lie, technically. Just not the school they knew about. The night I submitted it, I cried. Not from sadness, but from hope. Dangerous, foolish hope that maybe, just maybe, I could be someone different. Someone who mattered. I'd been checking the mailbox every single day for 3 weeks. Rain, shine, snow. I was there at 3:47 p.m. sharp, right when the mail truck turned onto our street. My heart would hammer as I flipped through bills and junk mail, searching for that thick envelope everyone talks about. But it never came. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Harvard's admissions office from the school library, my voice shaking so badly the woman on the phone asked if I was okay. The letter was delivered 2 days ago, she said cheerfully. Congratulations, by the way. We're excited to welcome you to campus in the fall. My blood turned to ice water. I hung up without responding and ran home, ignoring the stitch in my side. I tore through the recycling bin in the garage, digging past newspapers and Amazon boxes. At the very bottom I found it, A torn envelope with a Harvard return address, empty except for hatred. That's when I heard the shredder start up behind me. I confronted him right there, my voice coming out higher and shakier than I wanted. Why would you do that to me? He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He just leaned against his truck, that same beer in his hand, and smirked. Actually smirked. Because you belong here, Lauren. Not out there pretending you're better than us. You think those rich kids are gonna accept some nobody from a family like ours? I earned that acceptance. I screamed, and I never screamed. I worked for 4 years. You worked for nothing, he cut me off. I'm your father. I know what's best for you. End of discussion. That night I packed a bag. Just the essentials, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the emergency money I'd been saving. I was halfway to the door when Mom appeared, blocking my path. Don't make him angrier, she whispered, her fingers wrapping around my wrist. Please. It'll be worse if you leave. So I stayed. But something fundamental had changed. I wasn't his daughter anymore. I was his prisoner, counting down the days until I could break free. I started planning in secret. Every dollar I earned went into a hiding spot, inside an old calculus textbook with a hole cut in the pages. 20 here, 50 there. Tips from the grocery store, babysitting money. Even the birthday cash from my grandmother that Dad couldn't confiscate without looking like a monster in front of her. I picked up a second job cleaning at Ruby's Diner 3 nights a week. I told my parents the extra hours were mandatory, that my manager threatened to fire me otherwise. Dad grumbled about it but let it slide because the money helped with bills. What he didn't know was that I only gave them half. The rest disappeared into my textbook bank. I stopped applying to schools from home. Too risky. Instead, I spent lunch periods in the school library, using their computers and a fake email address Dad didn't know about. I applied to MIT, Stanford, Berkeley. Anywhere far enough that he couldn't just show up and drag me back. Every college application felt like an act of rebellion. Every essay was a middle finger to the man who said I'd never be anything. I was building an escape pod one piece at a time. Mrs. Kent noticed something was wrong during chemistry lab. I'd always been her best student, but lately I was falling asleep over the Bunsen burners, making careless mistakes that weren't like me. Was in the library when my phone buzzed, and the subject line made my heart stop. MIT admissions decision. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I clicked it open, scanning past the formal greeting, searching for the one word that mattered. Congratulations. I gasped so loud the librarian shushed me. I didn't care. I read it 3 more times, making sure it was real, that my brain wasn't playing tricks on me. Full scholarship. Housing assistance. Work-study program. They wanted me. Then reality crashed down. I was sitting in a public library with the evidence of my betrayal glowing on my screen. I deleted the email immediately, cleared my browser history, logged out of everything. But I couldn't stop smiling. That night at dinner, Dad noticed. What's got you so happy? He demanded, fork frozen halfway to his mouth. Just a meme someone sent me. I lied, forcing my face neutral. He stared at me for too long, eyes narrowed with suspicion. I focused on pushing peas around my plate until he finally looked away. But I could feel his distrust like a physical weight. Mrs. Kent helped me buy a one-way bus ticket to Boston. She paid for it herself, waving away my protests. Pay me back by graduating, she said. I planned my escape for 3 weeks, down to the minute. I'd leave on a Friday night payday so I'd have cash. Dad always fell asleep drunk on the couch around 10. Mom would be in bed by 9:30, exhausted from pretending everything was fine. The night finally came. I watched Dad's beer cans pile up, counting them like a countdown. 1, 2, 3, 4. At can number 6, his head started to loll. By 7 he was snoring, one arm dangling off the couch cushions. I stood in the doorway of the living room, my backpack already by the front door, and looked at him one last time. The man who was supposed to protect me had become the thing I needed protecting from. His face was slack in sleep, almost peaceful. Almost human. You won't even know I'm gone until I'm gone, I whispered. Then I picked up my bag and walked out of that house forever. The bus ride took 14 hours. I watched my hometown disappear in the rearview mirror, then the state line, then everything familiar. Each mile felt like shedding skin I didn't know I'd been trapped in. I arrived in Boston at 6 in the morning with $212, one suitcase, and a scholarship that covered tuition but nothing else. The hostel I'd booked online was in a questionable neighborhood, but it was cheap and they didn't ask questions. That first night, I lay in a bunk bed that smelled like mildew and listened to strangers snore around me. I should have been terrified. I should have called home and begged to come back. Instead, I felt something I'd never felt before. Yes, I'd be washing dishes at night to pay rent. Yes, I'd be studying under flickering fluorescent lights while other students went to parties. Yes, it would be the hardest thing I'd ever done. But it was mine. My struggle, my choice, my life. For the first time ever I was free. The first year nearly broke me. I worked the graveyard shift at a diner, scrubbing pans until my hands cracked and bled. I'd go straight from work to my 8 a.m. lecture, still smelling like grease and exhaustion. My roommate complained that I never talked to her, but talking required energy I didn't have. I lived on instant ramen and dining hall leftovers. I wore the same 3 outfits in rotation because I couldn't afford laundry money. When my only pair of winter boots fell apart, I duct taped them back together and kept walking. There was a moment right before midterms when I almost quit. I was so tired I couldn't see straight, my grades were slipping, and my bank account had $11. I sat in the bathroom stall and cried, thinking about how easy it would be to just go home. Then I remembered his face. That smug, satisfied look when he shredded my letter. "You'll be back," he'd said. "Girls like you always come crawling back." I wiped my face, stood up, and went back to studying. If spite could fuel a rocket, I'd have made it to Mars. I wrote him a letter once, during finals week of my sophomore year. I was punchy from lack of sleep, and the words just poured out of me like poison I needed to expel. "Dear Dad, you threw away my future because you were scared I'd succeed where you failed. You wanted me small because my bigness reminded you how little you'd become. But here's what you didn't understand. You can't shred dreams. You can only shred paper." I went on for 3 pages, single-spaced, saying everything I'd swallowed for 17 years. Every insult, every put-down, every time he made me feel worthless. I told him I was thriving without him. That his absence was a gift. I sealed the envelope, addressed it, even bought a stamp. Then I tucked it into my journal and never sent it. Because the truth was, he didn't deserve my words. He'd never earned the right to know who I was becoming. But I kept the letter anyway. A reminder of what I was fighting for. Junior year I made the dean's list. Top 5% of my class. The chemistry department posted the names on a board outside the lab, printed on cream-colored paper with gold lettering. I stood there for 15 minutes, just staring at my name. Lauren Price. Dean's list. Biochemistry. A girl I barely knew congratulated me as she passed. Professor nodded approvingly. Someone took a picture of the board, probably to send to their parents. Had no one to call. No one to celebrate with. But for the first time that felt okay. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was rising. Every late night, every skipped meal, every moment I wanted to quit, it all led to this. My name on that wall. Proof that I was exactly as capable as I'd always believed. That night I bought myself a cupcake from the grocery store. Just one because that's all I could afford. I ate it slowly in my dorm room, savoring every bite. It was the best thing I'd ever tasted. The phone call came out of nowhere, spring of my senior year. I saw Mom on the caller ID and almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken in over 3 years. I'd sent a few emails in the beginning, just to let her know I was alive, but she never responded. I picked up on the 4th ring. "Hello." A fake email address Dad didn't know about. I applied to MIT, Stanford, Berkeley. Anywhere far enough that he couldn't just show up and drag me back. Every college application felt like an act of rebellion. Every essay was a middle finger to the man who said I'd never be anything. I was building an escape pod one piece at a time. Mrs. Kent noticed something was wrong during chemistry lab. I'd always been her best student, but lately I was falling asleep over the Bunsen burners, making careless mistakes that weren't like me. Haven't been yourself. I tried to brush it off, but she just waited. And maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe I was just tired of carrying it alone, but suddenly I was telling her everything. The shredded letter, my father's. She pulled me aside after class, her eyes soft with concern. Lauren, what's going on? You and Troll, the way my mother just watched it all happen. By the end, I was crying into my sleeve. Mrs. Kent didn't offer sympathy. She offered something better. Then we'll find another way, she said simply. She helped me reapply to MIT, writing a recommendation letter so glowing I barely recognized myself in it. She let me use the school's address for the application, so nothing would come to my house. When I tried to thank her, she just shook her head. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. I'd just been surrounded by the wrong people for too long. I printed one invitation on expensive cardstock. Gold-edged, elegant, the kind of thing that screams occasion. Most of my classmates had ordered hundreds, mailing them to every relative and acquaintance. I ordered one. On the back, in my neatest handwriting, I wrote, "Since you helped me learn what to overcome." I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. He'd know. I mailed it to his address 3 weeks before graduation. No return address, no explanation. Just that single card with its pointed message. Part of me hoped he wouldn't come. Part of me desperately needed him to see what I'd become despite him. The contradiction made my stomach hurt, but I sent it anyway. 2 weeks later, Mom called. "He got something in the mail," she said carefully. "An invitation." "I know. Are you sure you want him there?" I thought about that question for a long time. Did I want him there? Want implied affection, and I felt none of that. But I needed him to witness this. Needed him to see what he'd tried to destroy, thriving without his permission. "Yeah," I said finally. "I'm sure." His face crumpled. "Lauren, Thank you for coming," I interrupted, my voice polite but distant. "Have a safe drive home." Then I turned back to Mrs. Kent, physically dismissing him. I heard him stand there for a few more seconds before walking away. Should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like closing a book I'd been reading for too long. I learned later that Dad lost his job about 6 months after graduation. Downsizing, they said, but Mom admitted he'd been showing up drunk more and more often. The company finally had enough. Mom left him shortly after. She moved to an apartment near me, and slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding something. Not the relationship we'd had. That was dead and buried. But something new. Something honest. "I should have protected you," she said one night over dinner at my apartment. It was the first time she'd acknowledged her role in everything. "Yes," I agreed. "You should have." We sat with that truth between us. No excuses, no justifications. Just the raw fact of what happened and what it cost. Dad spiraled further. I heard through relatives that he was drinking heavily, barely leaving the house. Part of me felt guilty for cutting him off. But a larger part knew that his destruction was his own doing, not mine. I couldn't fix him. I could barely fix myself. The toxic cycle had to end somewhere. I chose to end it with me. I'm 22 now, teaching as a graduate assistant while working on my master's degree. My office is small, barely bigger than a closet, but it's mine. The walls are covered with periodic tables and research notes, and on the corner of my desk sits a small frame. Inside that frame is my shredded Harvard acceptance letter, painstakingly pieced back together like a mosaic. Some pieces are missing, they were too destroyed to save. But enough remains to read "Congratulations" and my name. A student knocked on my door last week. First generation, working 3 jobs, parents who don't understand why she wants to waste time on college. Her story sounded familiar, and when she asked if it ever gets easier, I showed her the frame. "My father destroyed this," I said. "He thought he could destroy me with it." She stared at it, then at me. But you're here. Exactly. Smiled. They can shred the paper, but they can't shred the dream. That lives in you. And no one can touch it unless you let them. She left my office crying but smiling. The same way I used to feel after talking to Mrs. Kent. I look at that frame every day, and I say the same thing to myself. You didn't destroy me. You built me. And I've never meant anything more. If you believe in second chances, dignity and success as the sweetest revenge, please like, subscribe and stay tuned for more stories like this one.